The Journey to the West. Chapter 2. Fully awoke to Bodhi's wondrous truths, he cuts off Mara, returns to the root, and joins primal spirit. Now we were speaking of the handsome Monkey King, who, having received his name, jumped about joyfully and went forward to give Subodhi his grateful salutation. The patriarch then ordered the congregation to lead Sun Wukong outdoors and to teach him how to sprinkle water on the ground and dust, and how to speak and move with proper courtesy. The company of immortals obediently went outside with Wukong, who then bowed to his fellow students. They prepared thereafter a place in the corridor where he might sleep. Next morning he began to learn from his schoolmates the arts of language and etiquette. He discussed with them the scriptures and the doctrines. He practiced calligraphy and burnt incense. Such was his daily routine. In more leisurely moments, he would be sweeping the grounds or hoeing the garden, planting flowers or pruning trees, gathering firewood or lighting fires, fetching water or carrying drinks. He did not lack for whatever he needed, and thus he lived in the cave without realizing that 6 or 7 years had slipped by. One day, the patriarch ascended the platform and took his high seat. Calling together all the immortals, he began to lecture on a great doctrine. He spoke with words so florid and eloquent that gold lotus sprang up from the ground. The doctrine of 3 vehicles he subtly rehearsed, including even the law's minutest tittle. The yak's tail waved slowly and spouted elegance. His thunderous voice moved even the 9th heaven. For a while he lectured on Tao. For a while he spoke on Chan. To harmonize the 3 parties is a natural thing. One word's elucidation filled with truth points to the birthless showing nature's mystery. Wukong, who was standing there and listening, was so pleased with the talk that he scratched his ear and rubbed his jaw. Grinning from ear to ear, he could not refrain from dancing on all fours. Suddenly the patriarch saw this and called out to him, "Why are you madly jumping and dancing in the ranks and not listening to my lecture?" Wukong said, "Your pupil was devoutly listening to the lecture, but when I heard such wonderful things from my reverend master, I couldn't contain myself for joy and started to leap and prance about, quite unconsciously. May the master forgive my sin." "Let me ask you," said the patriarch, "if you comprehend these wonderful things. Do you know how long you have been in this cave?" Wukong said, "Your pupil is basically feeble-minded and does not know the number of seasons. I only remember that whenever the fire burned out in the stove, I would go to the back of the mountain to gather firewood. Finding a mountain full of fine peach trees there, I have eaten my fill of peaches 7 times. The patriarch said, "That mountain is named the Ripe Peach Mountain. If you have eaten your fill 7 times, I suppose it must have been 7 years. What kind of Taoist art would you like to learn from me?" Wukong said, "I am dependent on the admonition of my honored teacher. Your pupil would gladly learn whatever has a smidgen of Taoist flavor." The patriarch said, "Within the tradition of Tao there are 360 heteronomous divisions, all the practices of which result in illumination. I don't know which division you would like to follow." "I am dependent on the will of my honored teacher," said Wukong. "Your pupil is wholeheartedly obedient." "How would it be," said the patriarch, "if I taught you the practice of the method division?" Wukong asked, "How would you explain the practice of the method division?" The practice of the method division, said the Patriarch, consists of summoning immortals and working the planchette, of divination by manipulating yarrow stalks, and of learning the secrets of pursuing good and avoiding evil. Can this sort of practice lead to immortality? Asked Wukong. Impossible, impossible, said the Patriarch. I won't learn it then, Wukong said. How would it be, said the Patriarch again, if I taught you the practice of the schools division? What is the meaning of the schools division? Asked Wukong. The schools division, the Patriarch said, includes the Confucians, the Buddhists, the Taoists, the dualists, the Mohists, and the physicians. They read scriptures or recite prayers. They interview priests or conjure up saints and the like. Can this sort of practice lead to immortality? Asked Wukong. The Patriarch said, if immortality is what you desire, this practice is like setting a pillar inside a wall. Wukong said, Master, I'm a simple fellow and I don't know the idioms of the marketplace. What's setting a pillar inside a wall? The Patriarch said, when people build houses and want them to be sturdy, they place a pillar as a prop inside the wall. But someday the big mansion will decay, and the pillar too will rot. So what you're saying then, Wukong said, is that it's not long-lasting. I am not going to learn this. The Patriarch said, how would it be if I taught you the practice of the silence division? What is the aim of the silence division? Wukong asked. To cultivate fasting and abstinence, said the Patriarch, quiescence and inactivity, meditation and the art of cross-legged sitting, restraint of language, and a vegetarian diet. There are also the practices of yoga, exercises standing or prostrate, entrance into complete stillness, contemplation in solitary confinement and the like. Can these activities, asked Wukong, bring about immortality? There are no better than the unfired bricks on the kiln, said the Patriarch. Wukong laughed and said, Master indeed loves to beat about the bush. Haven't I just told you that I don't know these idioms of the marketplace? What do you mean by the unfired bricks on the kiln? The Patriarch replied, the tiles and the bricks on the kiln may have been molded into shape, but if they have not been refined by water and fire, a heavy rain will one day make them crumble. So this too lacks permanence, said Wukong. I don't want to learn it. The Patriarch said, how would it be if I taught you the practice of the action division? What's it like in the action division? Wukong asked. Plenty of activities, said the Patriarch, such as gathering the yin to nourish the yang, bending the bow and treading the arrow, and rubbing the navel to pass breath. There are also experimentation with alchemical formulas, burning rushes and forging cauldrons, taking red lead, making autumn stone, and drinking bride's milk and the like. Can such bring about long life? Asked Wukong. To obtain immortality from such activities, said the Patriarch, is also like scooping the moon from the water. There you go again, Master, cried Wukong. What do you mean by scooping the moon from the water? The Patriarch said, when the moon is high in the sky, its reflection is in the water. Although it is visible therein, you cannot scoop it out or catch hold of it, for it is but an illusion. I won't learn that either, said Wukong. When the Patriarch heard this, he uttered a cry and jumped down from the high platform. He pointed the ruler he held in his hands at Wukong and said to him, "What a mischievous monkey you are! You won't learn this and you won't learn that. Just what is it that you are waiting for?" Moving forward, he hit Wukong 3 times on the head. Then he folded his arms behind his back and walked inside, closing the main doors behind him and leaving the congregation stranded outside. Those who were listening to the lecture were so terrified that everyone began to berate Wukong. "You reckless ape," they cried. "You are utterly without manners. The master was prepared to teach you magic secrets. Why weren't you willing to learn? Why did you have to argue with him instead? Now you have offended him, and who knows when he'll come out again." At that moment, they all resented him and despised and ridiculed him. But Wukong was not angered in the least, and only replied with a broad grin. For the Monkey King, in fact, had already solved secretly, as it were, the riddle in the pot. He therefore did not quarrel with the other people, but patiently held his tongue. He reasoned that the master, by hitting him 3 times, was telling him to prepare himself for the 3rd watch, and by folding his arms behind his back, walking inside and closing the main doors, was telling him to enter by the back door, so that he might receive instruction in secret. Wukong spent the rest of the day happily with the other pupils in front of the divine cave of the 3 stars, eagerly waiting for the night. When evening arrived, he immediately retired with all the others, pretending to be asleep by closing his eyes, breathing evenly, and remaining completely still. Since there was no watchman in the mountain to beat the watch or call the hour, he could not tell what time it was. He could only rely on his own calculations by counting the breaths he inhaled and exhaled. Approximately at the hours of Ji, he arose very quietly and put on his clothes. Stealthily opening the door, he slipped away from the crowd and walked outside. Lifting his head, he saw the bright moon and the cool, clear dew, though in each corner not one speck of dust. Sheltered fowls roosted in the woods. A brook flowed gently from its source. Darting fireflies dispersed the gloom. Wild geese spread word columns through the clouds. Precisely it was the 3rd watch hour. Time to seek the way, whole and true. You see him following the familiar path back to the rear entrance, where he discovered that the door was indeed ajar. Wukong said happily, "The Reverend Master truly intended to give me instruction. That's why the door was left open." He reached the door in a few large strides and entered sideways. Walking up to the patriarch's bed, he found him asleep with his body curled up facing the wall. Wukong dared not disturb him. Instead, he knelt before his bed. After a little while, the patriarch awoke. Stretching his legs, he recited to himself, "Heart, heart, heart. The way is most obscure. Deem not the gold elixir a common thing. Without a perfect man's transmitting a subtle rune, you'd have vain words, worn mouth, and tongue waxed dry." "Master," Wukong responded at once, "your pupil has been kneeling here and waiting on you for a long time." When the patriarch heard Wukong's voice, he rose and put on his clothes. "You mischievous monkey," he exclaimed, sitting down cross-legged. "Why aren't you sleeping in front? What are you doing back here at my place?" Wukong replied, "Before the platform in the congregation yesterday, the master gave the order that your pupil, at the hour of the 3rd watch, should come here through the rear entrance, in order that he might be instructed. I was therefore bold enough to come directly to the master's bed." When the patriarch heard this, he was terribly pleased, thinking to himself, "This fellow is indeed an offspring of heaven and earth. If not, how could he solve so readily the riddle in my pot?" "There is no 3rd party here to save your pupil," Wukong said. May the Master be exceedingly merciful and impart to me the way of long life. I shall never forget this gracious favor." "Since you have solved the riddle in the pot," said the Patriarch, "it is an indication that you are destined to learn, and I am glad to teach you. Come closer and listen carefully. I will impart to you the wondrous way of long life." Wukong kowtowed to express his gratitude, washed his ears, and listened most attentively, kneeling before the bed. The Patriarch said, "This bold secret saying that's wondrous and true. Spare, nurse nature and life, there's nothing else. All power resides in the semen, breath and spirit. Store these securely lest there be a leak. Lest there be a leak, keep within the body. Heed my teaching and the way itself will thrive. Hold fast oral formulas so useful and keen, to purge concupiscence, to reach pure cool, to pure cool, where the light is bright. You'll face the elixir platform, enjoying the moon. The moon holds the jade rabbit, the sun the crow. The tortoise and snake are now tightly entwined, tightly entwined. Nature and life are strong. You can plant gold lotus even in the midst of flames. Squeeze the 5 phases jointly, use them back and forth. When that's done, be a Buddha or immortal at will." At that moment, the very origin was disclosed to Wukong, whose mind became spiritualized as blessedness came to him. He carefully committed to memory all the oral formulas. After kowtowing to thank the Patriarch, he left by the rear entrance. As he went out, he saw that the eastern sky began to pale with light, but golden beams shone on the westward way. Following the same path, he returned to the front door, pushed it open quietly and went inside. He sat up in his sleeping place and purposely rustled the bed and the covers, crying, it's light, get up." All the other people were still sleeping and did not know that Wukong had received a good thing. He played the fool that day after getting up, but he persisted in what he had learned secretly by doing briefing exercises before the hour of Ji and after the hour of Wu. 3 years went by swiftly, and the Patriarch again mounted his throne to lecture to the multitude. He discussed the scholastic deliberations and parables, and he discoursed on the integument of external conduct. Suddenly he asked, "Where is Wukong?" Wukong drew near and knelt down. "Your pupil's here," he said. "What sort of art have you been practicing lately?" the Patriarch asked. "Recently," Wukong said, "your pupil has begun to apprehend the nature of all things, and my foundational knowledge has become firmly established. If you have penetrated to the Dharma nature to apprehend the origin," said the Patriarch, "you have in fact entered into the divine substance. You need, however, to guard against the danger of 3 calamities." When Wukong heard this, he thought for a long time and said, "The words of the Master must be erroneous. I have frequently heard that when one is learned in the way and excels in virtue, he will enjoy the same age as heaven. Fire and water cannot harm him, and every kind of disease will vanish. How can there be this danger of 3 calamities?" "What you have learned," said the Patriarch, "is no ordinary magic. You have stolen the creative powers of heaven and earth, and invaded the dark mysteries of the sun and moon. Your success in perfecting the elixir is something that the gods and the demons cannot countenance. Though your appearance will be preserved and your age lengthened, after 500 years, heaven will send down the calamity of thunder to strike you. Hence you must be intelligent and wise enough to avoid it ahead of time. If you can escape it, your age will indeed equal that of heaven. If not, your life will thus be finished." After another 500 years, heaven will send down the calamity of fire to burn you. That fire is neither natural nor common fire. Its name is the fire of Jinn, and it arises from within the soles of your feet to reach even the cavity of your heart, reducing your entrails to ash and your limbs to utter ruin. The arduous labor of a millennium will then have been made completely superfluous. After another 500 years, the calamity of wind will be sent to blow at you. It is not the wind of the north, south, east, or west, nor is it one of the winds of the 4 seasons, nor is it the wind of flowers, willows, pines, and bamboos. It is called the mighty wind, and it enters from the top of the skull into the body, passes through the midriff, and penetrates the 9 apertures. The bones and the flesh will be dissolved, and the body itself will disintegrate. You must therefore avoid all 3 calamities. When Wukong heard this, his hairs stood on end, and, kowtowing reverently, he said, "I beg the master to be merciful, and impart to me the method to avoid the 3 calamities. To the very end, I shall never forget your gracious favor." The patriarch said, "It is not, in fact, difficult, except that I cannot teach you because you are somewhat different from other people." "I have a round head pointing to heaven," said Wukong, "and square feet walking on earth. Similarly, I have 9 apertures and 4 limbs, entrails and cavities. In what way am I different from other people?" The patriarch said, "Though you resemble a man, you have much less jowl. The monkey you see has an angular face with hollow cheeks and a pointed mouth." Stretching his hand to feel himself, Wukong laughed and said, "The master does not know how to balance matters. Though I have much less jowl than human beings, I have my pouch, which may certainly be considered a compensation." "Very well then," said the patriarch. "What method of escape would you like to learn? There is the art of the heavenly ladle, which numbers 36 transformations, and there is the art of the earthly multitude, which numbers 72 transformations." Wukong said, "Your pupil is always eager to catch more fishes, so I'll learn the art of the earthly multitude." "In that case," said the patriarch, "come up here and I'll pass on to you the oral formulas." He then whispered something into his ear, though we do not know what sort of wondrous secrets he spoke of. But this Monkey King was someone who, knowing one thing, could understand 100. He immediately learned the oral formulas and, after working at them and practicing them himself, he mastered all 72 transformations. One day, when the patriarch and the various pupils were admiring the evening view in front of the 3 Stars cave, the master asked, "Wukong, has that matter been perfected?" Wukong said, "Thanks to the profound kindness of the master, your pupil has indeed attained perfection. I now can ascend like mist into the air and fly." The patriarch said, "Let me see you try to fly." Wishing to display his ability, Wukong leapt 50 or 60 feet into the air, pulled himself up with a somersault. He trod on the clouds for about the time of a meal and traveled a distance of no more than 3 miles before dropping down again to stand before the patriarch. "Master," he said, his hands folded in front of him, "this is flying by cloud soaring." Laughing, the patriarch said, "This can't be called cloud soaring. It's more like cloud crawling. The old saying goes, the immortal tours the North Sea in the morning and reaches Kangwu by night. If it takes you half a day to go less than 3 miles, it can't even be considered cloud crawling." "What do you mean," asked Wukong, "by saying the immortal tours the North Sea in the morning and reaches Kangwu by night?" The patriarch said, "Those who are capable of cloud soaring may start from the North Sea in the morning, journey through the East Sea, the West Sea, the South Sea, and return again to Kangwu." Kangwu refers to Ling Ling in the North Sea. It can be called true cloud soaring only when you can traverse all 4 seas in one day. "That's truly difficult," said Wukong. "Truly difficult." "Nothing in the world is difficult," said the patriarch. "Only the mind makes it so." When Wukong heard these words, he bowed out reverently and implored the patriarch, "Master, if you do perform a service for someone, you must do it thoroughly. May you be most merciful and impart to me also this technique of cloud soaring. I would never dare forget your gracious favor." The patriarch said, "When the various immortals want to soar on the clouds, they all rise by stamping their feet. But you're not like them. When I saw you leave just now, you had to pull yourself up by jumping. What I'll do now is teach you the cloud somersault in accordance with your form." Wukong again prostrated himself and pleaded with him, and the patriarch gave him an oral formula, saying, "Make the magic sign, recite the spell, clench your fist tightly, shake your body, and when you jump up, one somersault will carry you 180,000 miles. When the other people heard this, they all giggled and said, "Lucky Wukong. If he learns this little trick, he can become a dispatcher for someone to deliver documents or carry circulars. He'll be able to make a living anywhere." The sky now began to darken, and the master went back to the cave dwelling with his pupils. Throughout the night, however, Wukong practiced ardently and mastered the technique of cloud somersault. From then on, he had complete freedom, blissfully enjoying his state of long life. One day, early in the summer, the disciples were gathered under the pine trees for fellowship and discussion. They said to him, "Wukong, what sort of merit did you accumulate in another incarnation that led the master to whisper in your ear the other day the method of avoiding the 3 calamities? Have you learned everything?" "I won't conceal this from my various elder brothers," Wukong said, laughing. "Owing to the master's instruction in the first place and my diligence day and night in the second, I have fully mastered the several matters." "Let's take advantage of the moment," one of the pupils said. "You try to put on a performance and we'll watch." When Wukong heard this, his spirit was aroused and he was most eager to display his powers. "I invite the various elder brothers to give me a subject. What do you want me to change into?" "Why not a pine tree?" they said. Wukong made the magic sign and recited a spell. With one shake of his body, he changed himself into a pine tree. Truly, it was thickly held in smoke through all 4 seasons. Its chaste fair form soared straight to the clouds, with not the least likeness to the impish monkey, its all frost-tried and snow-tested branches. When the multitude saw this, they clapped their hands and roared with laughter, everyone crying, "Marvelous monkey! Marvelous monkey!" They did not realize that all this uproar had disturbed the patriarch, who came running out of the door dragging his staff. "Who is creating this bedlam here?" he demanded. At his voice, the pupils immediately collected themselves, set their clothes in order, and came forward. Wukong also changed back into his true form, and slipping into the crowd, he said, "For your information, Reverend Master, we are having fellowship and discussion here. There is no one from outside causing any disturbance." "You were all yelling and screaming," said the patriarch angrily, "and were behaving in a manner totally unbecoming to those practicing cultivation. Don't you know that those in cultivation of Tao resist, opening their mouths lest they waste their breath and spirit, or moving their tongues lest they provoke arguments? Why are you all laughing noisily here? We dare not conceal this from the master, the crowd said. Just now we were having fun with Wukong, who was giving us a performance of transformation. We told him to change into a pine tree, and he indeed became a pine tree. Your pupils were all applauding him, and our voices disturbed the reverend teacher. We beg his forgiveness. Go away, all of you, the patriarch said. You, Wukong, come over here. I ask you, what sort of exhibition were you putting on, changing into a pine tree? This ability you now possess is just for showing off to people. Suppose you saw someone with this ability. Wouldn't you ask him at once how he acquired it? So when others see that you are in possession of it, they'll come begging. If you're afraid to refuse them, you will give away the secret. If you don't, they may hurt you. You're actually placing your life in grave jeopardy. I beseech the master to forgive me, Wukong said, kowtowing. I won't condemn you, said the patriarch, but you must leave this place. When Wukong heard this, tears fell from his eyes. Where am I to go, teacher? He asked. From wherever you came, the patriarch said. You should go back there. I came from the East Purvavidea continent, Wukong said, his memory jolted by the patriarch. From the water curtain cave of the flower fruit mountain in the DALL-E country. Go back there quickly and save your life, the patriarch said. You cannot possibly remain here. Allow me to inform my esteemed teacher, said Wukong, properly penitent. I have been away from home for 20 years, and I certainly long to see my subjects and followers of bygone days again. But I keep thinking that my master's profound kindness to me has not yet been repaid. I therefore dare not leave. There is nothing to be repaid, said the patriarch. See that you don't get into trouble and involve me. That's all I ask. Seeing that there was no alternative, Wukong had to bow to the patriarch and take leave of the congregation. Once you leave, the patriarch said, you're bound to end up evil-doing. I don't care what kind of villainy and violence you engage in, but I forbid you ever to mention that you are my disciple. For if you but utter half the word, I'll know about it. You can be assured, wretched monkey, that you'll be skinned alive. I will break all your bones and banish your soul to the place of ninefold darkness, from which you will not be released, even after 10,000 afflictions. I will never dare mention my master, said Wukong. I'll say that I've learned this all by myself. Having thanked the patriarch, Wukong turned away, made the magic sign, pulled himself up, and performed the cloud somersault. He headed straight toward the East Purvavidea, and in less than an hour he could already see the flower fruit mountain and the water curtain cave. Rejoicing secretly, the handsome Monkey King said to himself, I left weighed down by bones of mortal stock. The Tao attained makes light both body and frame. 'Tis this world's pity that none firmly resolves to learn such mystery that by itself is plain. 'Twas hard to cross the seas in former time. Returning this day I travel with ease. Words of farewell still echo in my ears. I never hoped to see so soon the eastern depths. Wukong lowered the direction of his cloud and landed squarely on the flower fruit mountain. He was trying to find his way when he heard the call of cranes and the cry of monkeys. The call of cranes reverberated in the heavens, and the cry of monkeys moved his spirit with sadness. "Little ones," he called out, "I have returned." From the crannies of the cliff, from the flowers and bushes, and from the woods and trees, monkeys great and small leapt out by the tens of thousands and surrounded the handsome Monkey King. They all kowtowed and cried, "Great King, what laxity of mind! Why did you go away for such a long time and leave us here longing for your return like someone hungering and thirsting? Recently, we have been brutally abused by a monster who wanted to rob us of our water curtain cave. Out of sheer desperation, we fought hard with him. And yet all this time, that fellow has plundered many of our possessions, kidnapped a number of our young ones, and given us many restless days and nights watching over our property. How fortunate that our great king has returned. If the great king had stayed away another year or so, we and the entire mountain cave would have belonged to someone else." Hearing this, Wukong was filled with anger. "What sort of a monster is this," he cried, "that behaves in such a lawless manner? Tell me in detail, and I will find him to exact vengeance." "Be informed, great king," the monkey said, kowtowing, "that the fellow calls himself the monstrous king of havoc, and he lives north of here." Wukong asked, "From here to his place, how great is the distance?" The monkeys replied, "He comes like the cloud and leaves like the mist, like the wind and the rain, like lightning and thunder. We don't know how great the distance is." "In that case," said Wukong, "go and play for a while and don't be afraid. Let me go and find him." Dear Monkey King, he leapt up with a bound and somersaulted all the way northward until he saw a tall and rugged mountain. What a mountain! Its pen-like peak stands erect. Its winding streams flow unfathomed and deep. Its pen-like peak standing erect cuts through the air. Its winding streams, unfathomed and deep, reach diverse sites on earth. On two ridges flowers rival trees in exotic charm. At various spots pines match bamboos in green. The dragon on the left seems docile and tame. The tiger on the right seems gentle and meek. Iron oxen. On occasion are seen plowing. Gold coin flowers are frequently planted. Rare fowls make melodious songs. The phoenix stands facing the sun. Rocks worn smooth and shiny, by water placid and bright, appear by turns grotesque, bizarre and fierce. In countless numbers are the world's famous mountains. Where flower bloom and wither, they flourish and die. What place resembles this long-lasting scene, wholly untouched by the 4 seasons and 8 epochs? This is, in the 3 regions, the Mount of Northern Spring, the Water Belly Cave, nourished by the 5 phases. The handsome Monkey King was silently viewing the scenery when he heard someone speaking. He went down to the mountain to find who it was, and he discovered the Water Belly Cave at the foot of the steep cliff. Several imps who were dancing in front of the cave saw Wukong and began to run away. "Stop!" cried Wukong. "You can use the words of your mouth to communicate the thoughts of my mind. I am the Lord of the Water Curtain Cave in the Flower Fruit Mountain south of here. Your monstrous king of havoc, or whatever he's called, has repeatedly bullied my young ones, and I have found my way here with the specific purpose of settling matters with him." Hearing this, the imps darted into the cave and cried out, "Great King, a disastrous thing has happened." "What sort of disaster?" asked the monstrous king. "Outside the cave," said the imps, "there is a monkey who calls himself the Lord of the Water Curtain Cave in the Flower Fruit Mountain. He says that you have repeatedly bullied his young ones, and that he has come to settle matters with you." Laughing, the monstrous king said, "I have often heard those monkeys say that they have a great king who has left the family to practice self-cultivation. He must have come back. How is he dressed, and what kind of weapon does he have?" "He doesn't have any kind of weapon," the imp said. "He is bareheaded, wears a red robe with yellow sash, and has a pair of black boots on. He looks like neither a monk nor a layman, neither a Taoist nor an immortal. He's out there making demands with naked hands and empty fists." When the monstrous king heard this, he ordered, "Get me my armor and my weapon." These were immediately brought out by the imps, and the monstrous king put on his breastplate and helmet, grasped his scimitar, and walked out of the cave with his followers. "Who is the Lord of the Water Curtain Cave?" he cried with a loud voice. Quickly opening wide his eyes to take a look, Wukong saw that the monstrous king wore on his head a black gold helmet, which gleamed in the sun, and on his body a dark silk robe, which swayed in the wind. Lower he had on a black iron vest, tied tightly with leather straps. His feet were shod in finely carved boots, grand as those of warriors great. 10 spans the width of his waist, 30 feet the height of his frame. He held in his hands a sword, its blade was fine and bright. His name, the Monster of Havoc, of most fearsome form and look. "You have such big eyes, reckless monster, but you can't even see an old monkey," the Monkey King shouted. When the monstrous king saw him, he laughed and said, "You're not 4 feet tall, nor are you 30 years old. You don't even have weapons in your hands. How dare you be so insolent, looking for me to settle accounts?" "You reckless monster," cried Wukong. "You are blind indeed. You think I'm small, not knowing that it's hardly difficult for me to become taller. You think I'm without weapon, but my 2 hands can drag the moon down from the edge of heaven. Don't be afraid. Just have a taste of old monkey's fist." He leapt into the air and aimed a blow smack at the monster's face. Parrying the blow with his hand, the monstrous king said, "You are such a midget and I'm so tall. You want to use your fist, but I have my scimitar. If I were to kill you with it, I would be a laughing stock. Let me put down my scimitar and we'll see how well you can box." "Well said, fine fellow," replied Wukong. "Come on." The monstrous king shifted his position and struck out. Wukong closed in on him, hurtling himself into the engagement. The 2 of them pummeled and kicked, struggling and colliding with each other. It is easy to miss on a long reach, but a short punch is firm and reliable. Wukong jabbed the monstrous king in the short ribs, hit him on his chest, and gave such heavy punishment with a few sharp blows that the monster stepped aside, picked up his huge scimitar, aimed it straight at Wukong's head, and slashed at him. Wukong dodged, and the blow narrowly missed him. Seeing that his opponent was growing fiercer, Wukong now used the method called the body beyond the body, plucking a handful of hairs from his own body and throwing them into his mouth. He chewed them to tiny pieces, then spat them into the air. "Change!" he cried, and they changed at once into 200 or 300 little monkeys encircling the combatants on all sides. For you see, when someone acquires the body of an immortal, he can project his spirit, change his form, and perform all kinds of wonders. Since the Monkey King had become accomplished in the way, every one of the 4,000 hairs on his body could change into whatever shape or substance he desired. The little monkeys he had just created were so keen of eye and so swift of movement that they could be wounded by neither sword nor spear. Look at them. Skipping and jumping, they rushed at the monstrous king and surrounded him. Some hugging, some pulling, some crawling in between his legs, some tugging at his feet. They kicked and punched. They yanked at his hair and poked at his eyes. They pinched his nose and tried to sweep him completely off his feet, until they tangled themselves into confusion. Meanwhile, Wukong succeeded in snatching the scimitar, pushed through the throng of little monkeys, and brought the scimitar down squarely onto the monster's skull, cleaving it in two. He and the rest of the monkeys then fought their way into the cave and slaughtered all the imps, young and old. With a shake, he collected his hair back onto his body, but there were some monkeys that did not return to him. They were the little monkeys kidnapped by the monstrous king from the water curtain cave. "Why are you here?" asked Wukong. The 30 or 50 of them all said tearfully, "After the great king went away to seek the way of immortality, the monster menaced us for the 2 whole years and finally carried us off to this place. Don't these utensils belong to our cave? These stone pots and bowls were all taken by the creature." "If these are our belongings," said Wukong, "move them out of here." He then set fire to the water-belly cave and reduced it to ashes. "All of you," he said to them, "follow me home." "Great King," the monkeys said, "when we came here, all we felt was wind rushing past us, and we seemed to float through the air until we arrived here. We don't know the way. How can we go back to our home?" Wukong said, "That's a magic trick of his, but there's no difficulty. Now I know not only one thing, but 100. I am familiar with that trick too. Close your eyes, all of you, and don't be afraid." "Dear Monkey King," he recited a spell, rode for a while on a fierce wind, and then lowered the direction of the cloud. "Little ones," he cried, "open your eyes." The monkeys felt solid ground beneath their feet and recognized their home territory. In great delight, every one of them ran back to the cave along the familiar roads and crowded in together with those waiting in the cave. They then lined up according to age and rank and paid tribute to the Monkey King. Wine and fruits were laid out for the welcome banquet. When asked how he had subdued that monster and rescued the young ones, Wukong presented a detailed rehearsal, and the monkeys broke into unending applause. "Where did you go, Great King?" they cried. "We never expected that you would acquire such skills." "The year I left you all," Wukong said, "I drifted with the waves across the great eastern ocean and reached the West Aparagodonia continent. I then arrived at the South Jambudvipa continent, where I learned human ways, wearing this garment and these shoes. I swaggered along with the clouds for 8 or 9 years, but I had yet to learn the great art. I then crossed the great western ocean and reached the West Aparagodonia continent. After searching for a long time, I had the good fortune to discover an old patriarch who imparted to me the formula for enjoying the same age as heaven, the secret of immortality." "Such luck is hard to meet even after 10,000 afflictions," the monkey said, all congratulating him. "Little ones," Wukong said, laughing again, "another delight is that our entire family now has a name." "What is the name of the great king?" "My surname is Sun," replied Wukong, "and my religious name is Wukong." When the monkeys heard this, they all clapped their hands and shouted happily. "If the great king is elder Sun, then we are all junior Suns, Suns the Third, small Suns, tiny Suns, the Sun family, the Sun nation, and the Sun cave." So they all came and honored Elder Sun with large and small bowls of coconut and grape wine, of divine flowers and fruits. It was indeed one big happy family. Lo, the surname is one, the selves returned to its source. This glory awaits, a name recorded in heaven. We do not know what the result was and how Wukong would fare in this realm. Let's listen to the explanation in the next chapter.